2.6 billion people have never used the internet. Right now, we're talking on the internet. But now that how much of human potential is outside the reach of so much people? The internet is where all human knowledge exists. And today with AI, all human knowledge is actually able to assist as many human beings as possible.
That for solving the climate and the SDGs, we need to think globally.
In a world yearning for change, there exists a community of visionaries and innovators, united by a common goal to solve Earth's biggest challenges. As role models for future generations, we're building a world where wisdom and consciousness rise, harmonizing life with nature and all species. Join us. Together, let's create a balanced, sustainable future for all.
Just imagine that you're in Kenya and you're talking to there's a smallholder farmer in a rural part of Kenya. His name is Njoroge. He has a wife called Mumbi, and they've just bought a $40 smartphone, the cheapest model, and is out in the farm in Karatina and looking at his maize crops. And, he has one of the crops starts having, some, like insects biting it. And so he's fearful of what might happen to his harvest. And so what he does is, like, in this phone that he has gotten, it's actually comes pre-installed with an app. And it's called a Niambie. It's called Tell Me. And, he knows from the advertisement that he can ask it any question. And what it is actually a large language model that has been miniaturized and can sit on his smartphone. And even if he doesn't have internet, then it has been pre-programmed the same way you have Mistral or Llama. It can be able to, he can speak to it the same way today you can speak with OpenAI in English. He can speak to it in his local language of Kikuyu. And him and his wife, they can talk to it, and he can actually take it and take a photo of the plant, the maize plant, and the bitings on the plant and the insect. And just the same way that an AI can be able to tell you this is this particular insect and this is the damage it's causing, and it tells him in his local language what he needs to do to address the problem, where he can get the medicine for the crops. And now you can enable him to save his harvest. So he would have lost his harvest. He has 3 children. This is what he uses when he sells in the market to take his children to school. And now you've actually enabled him to save his crop by knowing how to take care of the pests. And it's all in a voice and a language that he understands in the village. Most farmers are 65 and above here in Africa. And he's actually now able to engage with it in a language that he understands well enough, and it solves his problem. And we see this, and I'm imagining that this can be used for multiple cases in a periphery where, let's say you in a place called Eldoret, you have a healthcare worker who takes the same phone. In this case, it has been trained on an expert model for healthcare. And one of the ladies, Chebet, has just delivered, but the child has, the skin is changing color, like jaundice in the eyes. And she just takes it and takes a photo of the eyes, and it's able to tell her that the kid has jaundice, and these are the complications of the birth, and this is the remedy to take, and this is in a periphery area, and she can now solve this. Another case of like this, a student in a village somewhere, and they want to get some content and learn from it, and they can do the same thing on the device where it's been pre-installed with like an offline model. And we see this being able to be used in multiple places. Even on top of that, right now the climate is changing a lot, and that farmer, let's go back to Njoroge, and can tell him, you know what, this is what's going to happen in the next few weeks, so we suggest you start tilling your land right now, or it tells him that these are the ways of irrigation you can actually do. And there's a new water pump that is solar powered that can help you in your farm. And so right now, because we're going to have a lot of challenge with climate, and already it's happening a lot in Africa right now. We should not be having a lot of heat, but now it's really hot in February, and all looking for ways to mitigate the effects of climate and climate change to these farmers. And so this is how I'm thinking.
This is your product, this app, right?
Yes.
It works without an internet.
Yes. So we're building it to work without internet. So this is the research we're doing.
And can you update, for example, if it's updated to the latest research in crops and climate, in weather around your country and what's happening, to have set up the alarm? Because now we also have a working group around climate detection, and if especially for wildfires. But if you can connect this in a way that you have detection apps, and those need some regular updates as well, and they can then signalize you, hey, your crop is in danger, go and just prepare.
Yeah, so this can happen once in a while when so this is the habit.
Through the mobile provider?
Yes, you can work with the mobile provider. So for example, in Kenya, this is what usually happens. Most people have their data on maybe once or twice in a week because the data is expensive. But now they'll be knowing that, okay, I have it for this use case. And then once in a while, when I get access to internet, I can just update it for a few shillings. Or let's say $0.2 or and there's also a way where we can actually work with the telcos where we can find a way for them to zero rate. The same way larger companies like Meta and others, we can find capital to zero rate the update of these models that are running on the phone, update them for zero rate for the user, but someone else pays for it. So we can find ways of monetizing and or paying for the utility of the tool on the phone. Because the same way, for example, today that Meta and others usually zero rate internet usage for WhatsApp or for other applications. That is one of the things that we're exploring.
Where are you with your product today?
So right now we've built out one use case for small and medium enterprises, because what happens in Africa is that right now only 2% of people on the continent have access to credit cards. So what we use instead is mobile money. So via text message, people send and receive money via text message. And so that text message generates a lot of data for small and medium enterprises. And so we are able to run a model to analyze this data and be able to give them insights on how to improve their business using this data. And so we've already built out this tool for them. And now we're building out the technology to actually run it completely offline. And so that's where we're building the technology.
So this is the way that farmers in Africa right now, they can pay for different services through SMS? Because I also know that you are open for crypto. I mean, some of the African countries opened up for this. How about? And I love the fact that you have many statistics. I just love that you did your homework, you know what you're talking, you have the numbers. This is awesome.
Yes.
So tell me the numbers and the adoption rate about this technology, for example, and other ways, crypto or something else, for the farmers.
So for example, one statistics I can put there. So in 2023, about $1.2 trillion was transacted on mobile money globally, and about 800 billion was transacted in Africa in mobile money alone, right? And a lot of that happened in Kenya. So a lot of this is like farmers paying for things or merchants paying for things, receiving money for things. And so previously people had to actually put money on a bus to be delivered to someone, because we still don't have that, good banking infrastructure on the continent. So for us right now, what we are doing is we are partnering with one of the telcos, which has over 600,000 people who have a business transactions on mobile money. And we are looking to be able to reach those 600,000 people who are doing the business, but they also have a reach to 8 million other people who have an app where they do the transactions. And so we are partnering them, and this is only for Kenya, but we look to expand. And we're also looking at, I also lived in India for a year way back, and we are also looking at other emerging markets. And also I spent some time in Brazil. There we're looking for other partners that we could work with. And so we really see this as something that can go and transform the lives of people across the emerging markets.
And what motivates you? I would love to understand your human side as well.
I think it goes back to when I was 12 years old, right? I think about it today and I realize how fortunate I was. So I grew up in a peri-urban area of Kenya, outside of Nairobi. And one of the things that happened is my dad was interested in us, being interested in technology. And what he did is, like, in the 90s, people were throwing away, companies were throwing away computers all the time because of Moore's law. And so he used to get these computers that they were throwing out and bring them home. They were scrap computers, but some of them were working. So I'd just end up playing with them and taking them apart. And this one time, I discovered in one of the computers, there was the first chatbot that was ever developed in the 1960s. It's called Eliza. I found this program, and it's asking me immediately. I put it on. It's asking me, "Hello, what's your name?" And I say,
How
"My
old
name
were
is
you?
Mutembei."
12?
I was 12 years old.
Okay. So,
And so,
because it's a little bit similar with Elon Musk's story, but yeah.
yes, yeah, and he was also in Africa. He was in South
Yes,
Africa.
exactly. That's why.
Yeah. And so I'm here engaging with this, and then I start realizing, I'm talking with it, and it's saying, "Oh, how are you, Mutembei? How do you feel?" And the chatbot was designed around, based on like a psychologist, right? At MIT, and the actual person who built it in the 60s. And so that was my first ever interaction with, chatbots, with AI, with what now has eventually become ChatGPT. And for me, I worked on it on a very low power machine, right? In my, peri-urban area, I like to say that I grew up in sort of a forest because, I grew up in a school which was in school accommodation in almost a forest. But I was able to get interested in computers then. And so I think of how much more intelligent machines can be able to do for, people in remote areas across the world, and can really be able to transform all those people who don't have like all the resources in terms of like the best teachers, or they don't have healthcare. The same way I was able to engage with this intelligent machine, and then all those things that I had so many ideas of like what it could do. In that time, it was giving me company as a young boy, right? Here. And now imagine what it could do as a companion for a student, as a companion for a healthcare worker, for a farmer. And I think the thing that really drives me is that how can technology be able to transform the lives of people, not just technology for technology's sake, right? And I think because at that point I was just interested in technology, but I think a couple of years later, my life changed forever, because I think Kenya, we've been very lucky in Africa that we haven't had a lot of civil strife. We've had our own issues. But then when I was now 15, I went for a conference with the Organization of Africa Union, which is now Unity, which is now the AU. And in my room, I was with this 10-year-old boy who we went to the conference hall, and we saw this huge, presidential guard with an AK-47. And my roommate started laughing. He was like, "Oh, he thinks he's so cool and powerful. I can take his gun and dismantle it and put it back together in under a minute." And I'm like, that's really weird for a 10-year-old to be saying. And so later on, when we got back, he told me that he had been a child soldier in Sierra Leone from when he was 7. And I'm like, wow, the world is completely different. I just wanted to work with technology, but I realized the challenges that are there. And so also part of what motivates me is like, how can we make sure that there's never a future where someone grows up like my roommate, when I was 14.
We just got a volunteer. We didn't have a chance to talk much with her because of technology. But she looks like an amazing volunteer once we set things up. And she's from Sierra Leone, exactly. And so what you're saying, they are much back in time than you are, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. But now they have an amazing minister of education.
Oh.
He grew up there. He went to MIT. He got his PhD
Oh,
there,
good,
and he came
good.
back to work in the government in Sierra Leone. And so he's really also very forward thinking. He's also one of the people we all look up to.
We are all in this together, and it doesn't matter where we are, age, location, gender. It matters that for solving the climate and the SDGs, we need to think globally.
Today, a third of the world, 2.6 billion people, have never used the internet. Right now, we're talking on the internet. But now that how much of human potential is outside the reach of so much people? The internet is where all human knowledge exists. And today with AI, all human knowledge is actually able to assist as many human beings as possible. But a third of the human population cannot even access this. And what we are building now is infrastructure to enable the 2.6 billion people, as well as the other people who right now, because of the lack of building of enough AI infrastructure, will actually not be able to benefit from it. And we are building the infrastructure that can be able to run machine learning, the large language models, on devices as simple as a $40 smartphone, which is going to be able to change the lives of so many people. Imagine a small person in Bihar in India who has gotten a disease and can easily reach out to the phone and be able to query, take a picture of like a lesion in their skin. And we see if they get access to this internet, we'll be able to increase literacy rates in the world. And imagine if we had more Elon Musks in the world, how would the world look like in terms of innovation? Imagine if we could be able to cure different cancers in the world and get someone to get education to cure cancer in a different part of the world. Imagine if in New York City, someone was able to engage with an AI and be able to transform the lives of people in New York City and be able to engage in getting healthcare much faster than they did. Imagine the person who in Africa, where we're producing most of the world's food, we're able to produce more food, and people in the inner cities of the US can eat healthier because food production from Africa goes up. We can be able to lower the costs of inflation globally, and people can have more economically prosperous lives. Imagine the amount of unity that we can have in the world when more people have access to the right information and can be able to make good decisions and make better democratic choices, and we can have more peace all over the world. Sam Altman is asking you for $7 trillion. We are not asking for $7 trillion. We're simply asking for $1 million to set up our infrastructure so that we can be able to scale it to the next level. And we hope that this will be enabled right now for us to fulfill our partnership with our telcos and be able to reach up to 8 million people in Kenya alone. And then from there, we scale on from the revenues and for the next stage of investment in 18 months to raise another round so that we can be able to go to Latin America, India, and also start entering places such as the US, where you have all these places which are banking deserts and have no access to consistent internet, to places in Europe, to places in Asia.
So with $1 million, you can impact the first 8 million people
Yes.
in Kenya. Okay.
Yes.
And now the business model, how would we get the money?
So right now we have two business models. One is being able to offer this infrastructure for companies such as Samsung, LG, or Huawei, or Apple, who have the infrastructure to put it on phones across the world. That is the infrastructure.
So if 8 million people will use the text messages to enable this technology, what would be the return of investment?
So for example, right now, we already have people paying us $5 a month to be able, in terms of the merchants, for them to be able to get insights that are able to improve their businesses. In 18 months, we project that if we're able to reach only 500,000 of them, we can make an annual recurrent revenue of $30 million.
Yeah, $32 million for 8 million if you are doing this right. Yeah. Do you have a pitch deck for these
Yeah.
numbers and so on? Okay. If you would have the $1 million, how soon could you build the infrastructure for the 8 million people?
So we've already started, and so with the 1 million, we'd be able to do it in about 6 months. One is because we'd now be able to hire the full team working full time. So right now we've been doing it part-time. So I have co-founders, but because we haven't been able to raise enough money, we said, you work, we'll bootstrap, you continue working, earn a salary to have a living, put some money back into the company. We'll raise some small money from angels and accelerators. We've gotten some compute from Google, so we are part of a program with Google. We were part of a program with also Airbus and also with Nvidia, so we got some compute credits from them, and so now that's what we've been using to build out. Yeah.
And now a very, very important question you will need to find a good answer for. But I can see multiple options because we are going climate first and we want to highlight the pitches around everything that can help the climate and solve the SDGs sooner. So what is your biggest ambition and how your solution could be something that will help humanity when it comes to climate action?
So in terms of climate, part of like our expertise actually has been a lot around using remote sensing data, being able to use like high resolution satellite imagery. And the thing is, what we know is that a lot of people who are going to be impacted by changing climates are actually a lot of the people who are in the small and medium enterprises. So the data that we're able to get and know where this small and medium businesses are, we can start doing something around climate resilience and infrastructure, because the climate is changing and it's going to change. We haven't been able to stop it from the 2 degrees that's going to. So what we need to build is climate resilience in these businesses, right? How do you help them to absorb the shocks that are going to be coming because of changes in climate? A lot of this, merchants are within, for example, the agricultural supply chain, let's say restaurants and such. A lot of these prices are going to be fluctuating because of the, a lot of places, for example, let's say in Africa, is
How do you solve climate adaptation? Because this is today you saw David Dodd,
yes,
our first fireside chat. He will take on the entire panel or climate adaptation, because this is something we identified through him that it's not addressed. It's just it's under-financed. It's 7% out of 50% that should go for climate issues. So what would be this technology? How would help out with the climate adaptation?
One, within the agricultural supply chain, be able to do climate risk insurance for the businesses and also for the farmers. Because of the changing weather, we can now be able to collect as much data as possible about how the businesses are doing and how the farmers who need to sell their products, now we can be able to give them climate insurance. So whenever they have an adverse weather phenomenon that affects their crops, they already have insurance to be able to recover and to buy more seedlings and to be able to plant again. Because what usually happens if in the flood, it washes off, all whatever they had planted. Because they have insurance, they can get new seeds, they can plant. And then now it ripple effects all the way to the small businesses who have the restaurants and who have the products that are connected to agriculture. And they can also now be able to have access to these goods, and so you end up stopping inflation. So this is the way we are saying, like, if you can be able to have IoT devices that are getting hyper-local weather data, and then advise the farmers already on their cheap smartphones, $40 smartphones, and then be able to literally send them their climate insurance money from mobile money as well, then you can be able to help them to be more climate resilient.
Are you a hyper-local IoT device?
Yes, so that's because that's part of why we're building the infrastructure that can run these models, machine learning models in the periphery. So this will be able to, because right now what usually happens is like you have your IoT device, it has to keep on sending the data up, that's expensive and everything. But if you can have all the processing happening on device in that local area, it analyzes, data from like a certain period of time, and then be able and it's able to analyze and analyze the patterns, they communicate with each other, and then they can send that data already pre-processed now back to a center, which is now able to make decisions. And that can now be added onto in the next update for, let's say, one of the agricultural language models for the farmers. Then that can be able to help them to make better decisions, and actually inform also the insurers that, okay, this is what we need to tell the farmers.
I think that this is something awesome. And your ambitious dream, when would you think it's possible to connect all the 2.6 billion people to your innovation if things are going well and you get the support and help?
I honestly would want this to happen before 2030.
Good enough. How do I spell your name, please?
Mutembei.
Mutembei.
Yes, you're really, really good. You should come to Kenya. You should definitely come to
I
Kenya.
will someday. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, when we help those people, yeah, it will be a very nice celebration for sure.